And Andrew Hall from Weedale Woodturner here again, and what I want to do for you today is I want to do a little video on sharpening, and the system I'm using is the Record Power RSBG 8. It's the 8-inch grinding stones that are on the actual grinder. When I first started out 20 odd years ago, I had a little 6-inch grinder. It lasted for years and years, and I still have a small Record 6-inch grinder that I take with us when I go to do demonstrations. But for the purposes of this exercise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 8-inch one. Now, they come with the white wheel and a blue wheel, and it's a dark blue wheel, which is ideal for sharpening your mower blades and everything like that, or anything heavy duty. But I prefer the white wheel for the wood turning gouges because it's less aggressive with the actual tool. But I like the ruby wheel as well. But there are CBN wheels now, and on my 6-inch one I have a couple of CBN wheels which are excellent for really putting a very sharp edge on. But if you're just starting out, buy yourself a grinder, use the white wheel. When the blue wheel is worn down, replace it with either a white one or a ruby one, and it'll service you well. Or when you really get into it, get yourself a CBN for the side that the white wheel's on as well. Now, there are other methods of grinding or sharpening, I should say. There's wet systems. You could use the Tormek, you could use the Record Power wet system, and I think there's a couple of other manufacturers do wet systems as well. There's also the Robert Sorby Pro Edge. So there's a number of different grinders and sharpening systems that are out there. With all of them, what I suggest is you use a grinding jig. The jig that I use is available from Ian Caress Skidby Engineering, and he calls it the Wood Turning Wizard, and it's a great jig. You get repeatability on your grinds every single time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind the Magnificent 7 tools now. I've actually got the grinder on the end of the bench that I've built on top of the Powermatic to house the Coronet Herald for in the Herald studio. But what I want to do is I'll just show you the angles that we can show from the different cameras for the grinding exercise, which we've got this one here. So that's camera 1 that we've got on there, which is showing the angle from over the shoulder up there, so we can see the ruby stone and the white stone. We've got there, and that is from over this side to show the angle on there. I'm going to use the white stone to actually grind all of the Magnificent 7 tools. I don't know whether you can notice over here on the left hand side I've got a Tormek distance guide. I like my tools 75mm beyond the actual tool holder itself for the grind, and I'm just going to go into the third one, which is from there, and I can step back over here back in front of the camera again. So those are the positions that we'll have, and I'll just go back into the front again, and then we'll be able to use the tools straight on the lathe. So once I've finished this, I've got the grinder on here purely for the camera purposes. I'm going to move the grinder back into the area over in another part of the workshop to give a little bit more room on the turning area. So hope you enjoy it. Oh, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put my mask on while I'm grinding, and I'm going to put my face visor on as well. Even though the guards are already on here, double protection. Look after yourself. Doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're turning or you're grinding, make sure you're wearing your correct safety equipment. So what we'll do now is we'll go into the grinding, and I will overdub the grinding area so that I can talk to you about how I hold the tool, how I mark the tool, and everything like that. So here what I'm doing is I'm actually taking a blue marker pen, a Sharpie pen, and I'm just marking across the actual angle of the Spindle Roughing Gouge. Now the main reason for doing that is so that I can try it dry, and I can just lay it on the stone, and then I can draw the stone over the tool in order to be able to get a nice clean straight line through the grind. Once we've got the straight line through the grind, then we're ready to go, and we're able to start and grind the tool. So I've got my safety equipment on, and I've got the tool ready to grind there. I'm just gently going to rest it onto the stone. I'll go around the full circumference, or half circumference I should say, of the tool until we've actually removed the blue line and the tool's ground. Now we've got another angle showing how the tool's held in the cradle and just gently drawn over the stone to create a nice clean grind. Now what I'm using there is a cleaning stone. It's a white soft cleaning stone available from Record Power. And what I do is I clean the stone as I slow the stone down to start on the next tool. So the next tool I'm going to be working on is the parting tool. And again, I'm marking the actual angles on the tool so that we can see that they've been ground to the correct angle. And I don't do this every time, but when you first start to learn to turn, it's a good way to be able to make sure that you've got exactly the right angle and the grind when you're actually turning. So again, set up the cradle to the required distance, and then you're able to rest the tool on the stone, check that it's running straight across the actual facet, and then we can start and we can grind. Check everything's nice and tight on the wizard, and then we can start and just grind it over. And you can see I'm just gently laying the tool onto the stone and creating the grind. Do both sides, and then from the opposite angle. And I'm not putting any pressure on the tool at all, I'm just simply resting it on the stone. Now for the round skew, or what I like to use this for is to actually cut the spigots and the dovetails. So again, I've marked it with the blue. Now I'm using a diamond cleaner, an alternative cleaner. So again, set up the correct angle, move the stone, check that the facet's clean across the area that you marked with blue, and then you're good to go to be able to grind the surface so that it's equal on both sides. Let the grinder get up to speed, and again just rest the tool gently onto the stone and allow it to do the sharpening. Almost there, you can see there's still a little tiny bit of blue on there, but now it's gone. And again, nice and clean across both facets. Now what I'm going to do now is just make a mark on my traditional bowl gouge, and again I'll just stop the actual stone, but this time it's a point diamond cleaner. So that's 3 different types of cleaner. I've got the white stone, the standard diamond, and the point diamond cleaner. Again, what I'm doing is I'm setting up the actual cradle so that the angle of the tool is reflective on the stone. Now most of my tools are ground at 45 degrees, obviously with the exception of my skews and my parting tool, and they're ground at about 30 degrees. So again, just gently draw the tool over the stone and check that the actual facets even all the way around. Now what I'm doing now is I'm just moving the cradle in a little amount so that I can actually put what's called a secondary bevel on there, and that's what's called a micro bevel, and that helps when you're grinding, when you're doing a bowl, to eliminate the marks in the bottom of a bowl. Now again, that's the Devil's Stone. That one I bought from Ashley Isles. I must have had that about 15 years now, so you can imagine it's lasted a long time. Right, I've had my mask on all the time and I've had my visor on. Protect your lungs, protect your eyes, vitally important. What I was showing you there were cleaning stones. The first one is a white cleaning stone. It's more or less the same grade as the white stone, so it'll wear away quite quickly because it's soft. This one on the other hand is what's called a Devil's Stone, and that Devil's Stone, I must have had this 20 years, and I get these from Ashley Isles, by the way, and they are great for that. The other 2 cleaners that we've got are the diamond cleaners, and you've either got the straight across the front diamond cleaner like that, or you've got the point diamond cleaner. So those are the two that you can use for your dry system. And for me, I prefer the dry system. I much prefer to the wet system, but that's just my choice. So there we are. We've done the straightforward tools there out of the Magnificent Seven. So you've got your Spindle Roughing Gouge, the standard ground Bowl Gouge, the parting tool, and the Skew. So what we need to do now is we need to do our swept back grinds. Right, this is the tool holder that you get with the system that Ian makes, which is his Wizard, as he calls it. And I've got this set on an angle here of 45 degrees. So there you are, 45 degrees on that angle there. The actual tool holder itself is 150 millimeters, 6 inches away from the front of the stone. And from there to the middle of the stone is 6 inches as well. So what we've got, I'll just pop that onto here, and there's the gauge. I protruded 75 millimeters out of the actual tool holder, so there, 75 millimeters like that. And then I put that onto there and then tighten that down onto here, onto the tool holder there, which is there. And there we are, we've got that set up nice and tight, secure in position there. So I will just set this up now on the front of here in the same way as I did with the actual other tools in the cradle there. So I'm going to bring that into there. And again, back to my safety equipment. So the tool's actually protruding out of the tool holder now, 75 millimeters. And that's the length that I like to use, so as you've got a nice long swept back grind for about 25 millimeters. So that's 3 inches out of the tool holder, which gives you a 25 millimeter 1 inch lovely long swept back grind. Again, I'm just gently resting the tool onto the stone and allowing the stone to do the grinding. Right, I've got a brand new spindle gouge here now, and what I want to do is just take it from the traditional grind that you buy the shop or the factory grind that you buy and turn it into a swept back grind, which is how I like it. I must be honest, I prefer the swept back grind to the traditional grind, especially on a spindle gouge. So what I do is, on this one, I take it out and I put it in 55 millimeters. We'll take that out there, put that in 55 into there, like that. Tighten up the Wizard tool holder so that it's nicely onto the flute itself and not onto the round bar on here. And then what we do is, we've got the 45 degree angle on there, so that 45 degree angle is already there, so we can actually mark that again with our pen, so that when we set it up we know that we're going to take that 45 degree there. But what I want to do is sweep the wings back, because I find it easy to use with the wings swept back, less likely to get a dig in. So there we are, onto there. Check that that 45's there, make sure that's nice and tight, and this is tight, and just do that, and then yeah, you can see that whole blue line across there has disappeared. So that's going to be the 45 degree angle. Most of my tools are ground at 45 degrees. And then we pop that onto the cradle again in the tool, and I'll just pop my safety equipment back on, and then I'll show you how to take it from the traditional to a swept back. So let the grinder get back up to speed again. And first of all, I'll just work on the two wings. So I'll do the left wing and the right wing, and keep working on the wings, sweeping them back until eventually it actually joins in the centre. As said before, I like the 45 degree angle on the front of the tool, and unlike the Bowl Gouge, what I've got with the Spindle Gouge is that it's protruding out of the tool holder 55 millimeters, which is about 2 1/4 inches. Whereas the Bowl Gouge is 75 millimeters, which is 3 inches. So there, now what we've got is a nice sweep round so that the actual tool has the same angle on the facet all the way around the 180 degrees. And again, I'm just resting the tool on the stone. I'm not actually putting any pressure on the tool at all, and I'm letting the stone do the grinding. Now I do much prefer having a swept back grind on a spindle gouge. So there we are, there is the swept back grind there. I'll show you on there. There's a swept back grind onto there. Now you're probably thinking, why do we not just buy them with swept back ground wings on like that? It's the production costs. The production costs are kept down by just doing a factory grind. And as you can see, it doesn't take 2 minutes to put your own grind on it. I still keep 45 degree at the front, but I sweep the wings back. And I personally find it much sweeter to use, much safer to use, and it's how I like it. So that's the traditional ground spindle gouge to a swept back gouge. What I'm doing now is I'm just taking the other spindle gouge that I've got. I've got a couple of spindle gouges that I have on the go when I'm doing the projects to save having to grind in between different aspects of the work. And this one I'm using the ruby wheel. The ruby wheel I think is better than the white wheel, and it just puts that little bit sharper edge on. There's the negative rake scraper there. It's a traditional scraper taken to a negative rake, and what I do is I grind it from both sides so that you've got the negative rake on there. Right, so there we are, we've got the dome on there. So this is how we do the scraper. So again, safety equipment back on. Now with this scraper, this is a traditional scraper, it's not a negative rake. So this is what I'm starting off with to show how to grind a traditional scraper. We've got an angle at the front of around about 70 degrees, and I've got my table at an angle of about 30 degrees. So what I'm doing is I'm just floating it round on the table and keeping my finger pivoted so that it's well away from the stone in order to be able to create a nice clean facet straight around the scraper there. As you can see, there was still a little tiny bit of blue left on there, so I'm just going to continue sharpening the dome. And again, I'm using the ruby stone now to be able to do this, because I've got I've got the cradle in the white stone, but I've got the table on the ruby stone. And that's it. That's all we do with a traditional ground scraper. Straight around once more, and it's ready to go. That's it, slowing the stone down again. I'm using the Ashley Isles Devil Stone. I was just thinking I've actually had it over 20 years, so it served me well, that one. And back to the negative rake scraper. What I'm doing here is I'm marking both sides with the blue pen again so that I can line up the table and get the table so we've got the same angle from both sides. Effectively it looks a bit like a skew, and this is how I prefer to do my negative rakes. I'm resting it on there, the table, and I'm pivoting it again with my two fingers, being very careful not to catch the actual stone. As you can see, it is swept back quite a long way to create that negative rake on the dome. Now the negative rake scraper is always more successful than a traditional scraper. With the traditional scraper, you've got to have your backhand elevated so that you're cutting on centre, but it's what's called a raking cut. Whereas with the negative rake scraper, you can have it on the tool rest and it can be horizontal, and it means that you've got it's less likely to get a catch or a dig in. So there we are, I'm almost done with that. Checking that the facet's the same all the way around, it's nice and clean. The scraper that I showed you, the first one, was the largest scraper, and it was ground in the traditional way. Ground in a traditional way so that you can use it. It's a dome scraper. Now when you're using that, you need an elevated arm at the backhand. The backhand wants to be elevated so that you don't get a catch, and you're cutting right on the centre line. Whereas with the method that I've shown you with this one over here, this one, that is what they call the negative rake. The negative rake will allow you to use it in the horizontal position. Again, cutting on centre, but you'll get a really nice finish using the negative rake. Only if you cannot get a good enough finish with the bowl gouge. What I tend to suggest is try and get as good a finish as you can from the tool with the bowl gouge. Okay, so that concludes the actual Magnificent 7 sharpening. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it helps you to keep your tools nice and sharp. And I'll see you on the next video. So bye for now.